Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for September 22nd, 2017. On today's show, we're going to dive into the little news that there is in the movie world today. That includes a 3-hour cut of Superman the movie, Jordan Peele's new TV series, and a Christmas Story live casting. At the water cooler, we'll talk about Murder on the Orient Express, the book, and Mickey's not-so-scary Halloween party at Disneyland. And in the mailbag, we'll take another look behind the scenes at the movie blogging world and talk about set visits and what they're all about. Joining me today is Slash Film writer Ben Pearson. Not much. Not much at all.
Hey, what's going on?
Looking at the site today, there's so little news. I'm not sure what has been up with this week and last. Maybe it was all the film festivals that were happening, and Fantastic Fest is gearing to start up. TIFF, just ended last week, and it seems like there's a lot of trailers, but not a lot of juicy substance to talk about.
Yeah, it's weird. We sort of hit these stretches, these little patches, a few times every year where there's just like not much going on, and then all of a sudden we'll get like a burst of stuff to sort of make up for it. So I'm sure a wave is coming soon.
Last night, I got to go to Disneyland to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, and I'm a Disney annual pass holder, so I go there twice a month. Got to make use of that annual pass. If you're spending, $700, $800 a year, you got to make some use out of it. But one thing not included in the pass is every year they have these nighttime events where they close down Disneyland and they have a Halloween party. And those used to be like, $50, $60. I think now they're priced at $90. I think annual pass holders might get a discount. I forget how much we paid. But basically what it is Disneyland shuts down at 6 p.m. and you get to go in there, and they have a lot less people in Disneyland. There's and you have access to most of the big rides, and so you can get on most of the big rides in less than 20 minutes, which is a good deal if you weren't an annual pass holder. But if you're an annual pass holder, you're there so often that doesn't really matter. What it is really is, and I'm going to do this comparison for the site later this week between Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. Knott's Berry Farms has a Knott's Scary Farms, and Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, and compare them. And all these theme parks have kind of like made these, I think it's turned into like a month and a half now of this nighttime experiences, and for Disney it's a lot different than the other two. The other two are about these Halloween mazes where you're getting scared in these those kind of experiences. In Disney, it's more about normally at Disneyland you aren't allowed to dress up. I mean, little kids I guess are, but adults are not allowed to wear costumes at Disneyland. It's strictly prohibited. But at the Halloween party, it's kind of like Comic-Con with people, lots of adults dressing up. Like we saw this whole group, maybe of like 10 people that were like the Academy of Sidekicks, and like one of them was dressed as Aladdin's magic carpet. Another was dressed as Olaf. Another was dressed as Penelope von Schweetz. And it was like this whole group of them. So it's kind of fun to see that and see the little kids dressed up.
Nice.
All around the park. I'm wondering how interesting this is to hear about. All around the park, they have these trick-or-treat stations, which you go and get, you're given like this bag, and you can go to these trick-or-treat stations and get tons of candy. And if you were to just do that, you could probably walk out with like, 5 pillow bags worth of candy. But I'm on a diet, so that's not even something that I could really do. I had some candy last night, but well, my girlfriend.
So
Kitra
why do you go, Peter?
Really
what's
loves
the big
it
attraction for
of
you?
Two things. They have all the Disney character. Well, they'll have interesting Disney characters that aren't normally out and about. So some of the villains, you can take photos with some of the villains are around Disneyland. And also, like, the main characters, like Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, Pluto, Chip and Dale are in their, like, Halloween outfits, and you can get photos with them. That's something my girlfriend is really into. And also, they have an exclusive parade nice. That is you can't see otherwise, which has, like, segments from Nightmare Before Christmas, and other like they have the Headless Horseman from the classic short, so has stuff like that, and they have a exclusive
cool
fireworks show set to music from their those kind of films, the Halloween films of the Disney archive, and it's fun, but I'm not sure it's worth $90. But they sell it out every night. It's a big thing, and they're doing it now. Yeah. They're starting, last night was the first night, and that was September 20th. And, they're doing it for over a month, and it's packed. So there's no incentive. Oh, I should also be said that they have, like, some atmosphere. So they have some cool, like, fog going through Main Street and different areas, and lighting effects. And it's kind of and the Rivers of America, like, there's, fog is filling the rivers, and there's, like, the Dapper Dans are on a raft singing, like, Halloween songs, and I mean, it's a fun experience. But basically you're in there from 6 p.m. It closes at 11 p.m. So it's not you're paying a lot for And
you don't really get
I was driving
the
from
run
Los
of the
Angeles,
place
which
for
I told
that
you
many
online.
hours in a row.
It took us over 2 hours to get there. And I didn't even get to go over to Disney California Adventure and experience Mission Breakout. They have a new Halloween After Dark version of that. And also Cars Land is all decorated in Halloween. I haven't seen that yet, so we'll have to return sometime in the next month to see that. But if you're interested in any of this, if you're based out of the Los Angeles or Southern California area, watch out later this week while I will be comparing all three events and trying to determine definitively which is better. Yes. So what have you been up to?
All right. Yeah, looking forward to reading that. I recently read Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express for the first time. So there was a movie in 1974 that has an insane cast, including Sean Connery and a ton of really crazy people. But they're doing a remake of that, I guess, another adaptation. Kenneth Branagh is directing, and it's also, sort of similarly star-studded. So in anticipation of this new movie, I wanted to go back and read Agatha Christie's book. I've never read any of her books. I know that she's like a sort of undisputed queen of the murder mystery genre, right? And I hadn't read a book like that in a while. Yeah, so that's the thing, is I saw the 74 movie, but it was like 10 or 15 years ago probably, and I didn't remember what happens at the end. And in a whodunit sort of story, that's like a perfect way to revisit it. So instead of just rewatching the movie, I was like, all right, I'm going back to the original source material. I'm just going to get this story as Agatha Christie intended originally and just sort of, experience it this way, and then, take that into my viewing of the new movie. So I'm not going to spoil what happens in it, but it is one of the classic murder mystery stories for a reason, and the ending is really fantastic. I forgot, and I can't believe that I forgot how this thing ended, because it seems super iconic to me in hindsight. In retrospect, I never should have ever forgotten how this thing came to a close. But basically the story is about a detective who happens to be on a train that gets snowbound. So there's sort of, a bunch of people are on this train, and they're all trapped in the snow waiting for the weather to clear, and they discover that there's a dead body in the train. So nobody can go anywhere, nobody can escape, and the detective sort of methodically goes through every person on the train and sort of, figures out who the suspects are and what their motivations could be and all this stuff. So it's a really interesting book, and I think a lot of a lot of fun to read. It's only 315 pages. The book came out in 1934, and it's been entertaining people, for a long time. And it's a classic for a reason, I think. I like her writing style. She's very reliant on dialogue and doesn't really get caught up in flowery language or anything like that. The characters, there's a ton of characters. So if you're one of those people, sometimes I'll read a book, but I'll wait, a week just because I'm busy, like a week in between reading sessions. And if you do that, it's going to be tough to remember all these characters because there's a lot of people involved in this thing. But yeah, I'd recommend people checking it out, especially with the new movie coming up. Like I said, 315 pages. It's not going to take you that long to read it, and it's cool just to get a sense of a classic that's been around for a long time and one of the sort of
it's such
pillars
a classic
of the murder
that I feel like
genre.
Usually with these kind of stories, when you actually do end up diving into them, you kind of feel like you've seen or read them before because so many things in popular culture have either parodied or stolen from them. Do you get that sense from this, or does it still feel original and
right? I know that feeling very well, and I did not have that feeling reading the original book. And I think it's because the ending is so unique. And again, I'm not going to actually say what it is, but it would be tough for other properties to replicate the specific way that this story comes to a close. So it feels singular in that way, and that I think goes a long way in sort of shrugging off, even though there are plenty of detective stories and like even things like Sherlock and stuff, I'm sure have sort of the modern interpretations have probably used Agatha Christie's work as much as Arthur Conan Doyle's work, in sort of building the modern takes on Sherlock Holmes and stuff like that. Any sort of detective story, really. I think going back to this source material and reading it, you don't really get the sense of like, oh God, I've seen this a million times.
I usually
before.
like reading the books after I see the movies because not that I have the time, but when I do, because I've been so disappointed when I read a book and see the movie, and I prefer movies as a medium more than books, so I would rather enjoy the movie and experience books as the catching the deleted scenes, I guess. Okay, but speaking of deleted scenes, Superman the movie has a 3-hour cut, an extended edition, which is now coming to home video this year. And we're not talking about the Richard Donner director's cut, which I think was 2 hours and something. We're talking about a 3-hour cut of the movie. What do we know about this, Ben?
Yeah, so in 1982, some of our older listeners might remember that ABC aired a 2-night television event of Superman the movie, Richard Donner's classic 1978 Superman film starring Christopher Reeve. And that airing was 3 hours long. It was like 188 minutes, which is 40 minutes more than the theatrical version. And in subsequent home video releases, there have been, like you said, sort of Richard Donner has put out a definitive director's cut of his own, but it is not nearly as long as that. And it's featured, a couple of these little bonus scenes here and there. But this is the first time that Warner Archive is actually releasing this 188-minute cut of the movie that aired back in 1982. So it's a remaster, which is nice. If you go to slashfilm.com, this article that I wrote up, I actually found this guy on YouTube basically collected all of the extra scenes that made up the difference in that running time and put it into one video. And he sort of explains as these scenes are going up, how they slot into the larger experience. So you can see them, but because it aired in 1982, it's all in 4:3 aspect ratio, and it just looks like garbage. So the remaster is obviously going to be much better as soon as that comes out. We're not exactly sure what the date is going to be on that, but it seems like if they're going to be doing it before the end of the year, that'd be a cool Christmas present for the Superman fan in your life, the mega fan. And yeah, this is Superman as a property has released a ton of DVD releases and Blu-ray releases and stuff. There was one called Superman the Anthology, I think the motion picture anthology that came out a few years ago that was basically like every Superman movie and all of the Fleischer cartoons and all of the, like the TV show with George Reeves. It's just like this mega super box set. And even that did not have this 3-hour cut in there. So this is something special for people who remember that, or people who are looking for some of this footage that hasn't really been made available in any
I've never seen this, so I'm actually interested to see this. And
since
it's actually
1982.
interesting because back in the day, this kind of stuff was done all the time. Like there's a version of the Godfather trilogy, maybe, or maybe it's just the second one where it's told in chronological order, and that aired on, I think, HBO or some TV network that I don't think has been released on DVD or Blu-ray. Maybe it has. But I'm interested to see this. Did you ever see the Richard Donner cut of the sequel? Because
yeah, I did. It's weird because it's like it's got some unfinished effects and stuff in there, because there's like this whole story about how that movie was famously taken away from him because of issues that he had with the producers and all of that. And yeah, I was sort of saying in this article that I wrote about this extended version of Superman the movie that this extended thing, and which it's also packaged, I should say, with so there's the 3-hour cut, and then you also get Richard Donner's definitive cut in the same purchase, of the first movie. So that would, if you watch all of that, it would be a nice lead in to the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. If you
and it should be also noted that this comes with an all music only track, so which is great. I've actually seen it on the original Superman DVD.
Yeah,
and if you should at least at some point in your life find a movie, if not Superman the movie, and watch it just with the score and see how that experience, just hearing the music changes the movie. But I did want to say, like, the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, I wasn't happy with. I was so excited about, and I wasn't happy with. He kind of like steals the ending of Superman 1 to wrap it up, using the time travel and all that stuff. I would be interested in seeing Richard Donner come back and take this 3-hour cut of Superman the movie and Superman 2 and put them together into one massive epic movie. Because they were originally shot back to back, I think, and I think that could be interesting. But we're talking way too much about Superman.
I think that's right. Yeah,
Jordan Peele, a master of horror and comedy, is developing a 1970s set TV series. You wrote the story for SlashFilm.com. What do we know?
Yeah, he is working on a TV show called The Hunt, which is about a diverse band of Nazi hunters in 1970s America as they set out on a quest for revenge and justice, tracking and killing hundreds of Nazis who, with the unconscionable help of the U.S. government, escaped justice and embedded themselves in American society. So that sounds very in line with these sort of socially conscious thrillers that he has said to be working on the big screen side of things. He signed this TV development deal with a company called Sonar Entertainment a couple days before Get Out hit theaters. And this looks like the first TV project to, emerge from that deal. David Wheel is the guy who is actually writing the series. Jordan Peele is the one who is basically just executive producing it and sort of, he's working on it and developing it and overseeing it. His production company is producing it. But David Wheel seems like the guy who is the real sort of brains behind this particular show. He's also executive producing, and he is writing the script. If you don't recognize that name, I don't blame you. He hasn't really done much, but he has written a couple scripts that made the Blacklist, which is Hollywood's annual list of the best unproduced screenplays that come out every year. And in 2013 and 2014, he had movies make that list. So this seems like the first big project from him. And the idea of a show about, set in the 70s of people hunting Nazis sounds weirdly relevant right now. And it's the Hollywood Reporter was the one who reported this, and they mentioned in their piece that this TV show started to be pitched around town to different networks and stuff right after what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia earlier this year. So when those torch-carrying Nazi jackasses sort of took over the news. So it seems like, it seems like these people... basically made this show
so
relevant again for at least the foreseeable future.
That Jordan Peele has taken, watching his show Key and Peele. Key and Peele? I think that's I would have never thought that he would be making these kind of projects. Yeah, right. Obviously that shows what one film like Get Out can do for your career.
Yeah, and there's some subversive stuff in Key and Peele, but yeah, it's surprising. Sometimes you see a potential star in the making in a show like that, and it doesn't necessarily translate into when that person sort of goes solo and expands their horizons a little bit. But it seems like
Christmas
Jordan Peele is doing very, very well for himself
with a live adaptation. They have cast Matthew Broderick. What do we know?
Yeah, so he is going to be playing old Ralphie. So that's the narrator of the 1983 Christmas movie. There was a Broadway musical that I have not seen, but I actually embedded a couple clips in this piece at Slash Film that you can read if you want to see sort of how it might be different, because this is going to be a musical version.
No, it was not a musical. The movie was not a musical. This is in the line of, I remember, that Peter, new trend of having correct? Live... Okay. Almost like broadcasting almost Broadway adaptations on television, right? Like they've done it with Sound of Music, yeah. Mm-hmm. Hairspray,
like The Sound of Music, and I think like Peter Pan live. Christopher Walken was in that one. Yeah, exactly. So Maya Rudolph was previously cast. She's going to be playing Ralphie's mother in the movie. Or the live show, rather. And Matthew Broderick is going to be playing the older version of Ralphie. And I guess in the movie it was just a narrator, but in the Broadway show, it's like he is dressed in the same clothes as young Ralphie, and he's actually like out on the stage with him, sort of narrating, almost standing like right behind him, narrating. So it seems like he's going to be a little bit more involved than just the idea of like, oh, Matthew Broderick is the narrator of this thing. It sort of, in my mind at least, conjures up images of him just like standing off stage somewhere, just reading stuff off of a piece of paper. But Broderick is a 2-time Tony Award winning, actor who's been in a bunch of Broadway stuff himself. So he's very capable, especially in a live sort of environment. So I think he's going to be a lot more involved in this than
that the
just,
original
he's the narrator
movie,
that makes
A Christmas Story. Was based on stories by this guy named Gene Shepard, and he voiced the original narrator in the original movie. So it'll be interesting to see what this version's like.
Yeah,
I feel like this is a movie I used to love, and I used to, when 24 Hours of A Christmas Story would come on what is that, TBS or TNT, one of those two. I would have it on repeat on my television TBS, all Christmas Day, and I feel like now it's worn out its welcome.
I hesitate to even say this because I feel like I'll get hate mail or hate tweets sent my way, but I watched this movie one time and just didn't really get why it was a Christmas classic, and I've never seen it since then. And I saw it when I was, 14 or something like that. And I just never really got the idea. I was like, this is the movie that gets a 24-hour airing every season.
Jingle All the Way.
This is crazy to
also
me.
Gets a 24-hour airing on another channel. So, it's no indication of quality, but I feel like A Christmas Story perfectly captures Christmas as a family holiday in Americana, or at least my childhood. Maybe nowadays, I'm not sure if millennials would relate as much to a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot that I can't relate to, like, decoder rings and listening to the radio and whatnot. But They also made A Christmas Story too. I'm not sure if you know this, but in 2012, many years after the first one, they made this. I think it was like direct to video, and Daniel Stern played the father. I've never seen it. I've heard it's horrible. Let's see right now on IMDb, which is not a good indication of quality, but usually you have to do really bad to get a rating on IMDb that's under 6.5. On IMDb, A Christmas Story 2, 3.3 out of 10.
Yeah.
So yes. So if you want some torture this holiday season, maybe A Christmas Story 2. But I'm looking forward to the live version. Let's go from there to the mailbag. Peter from Gainesville, Virginia writes in, very much enjoying the daily podcast. I listened to it during my hour-long commute. A few questions have been the focus on the movie blogging world recently, like how to get into movie blogging, the press screening experience, etc. So I thought I'd add one more. You always hear about the many set visits you guys attend, and was curious how that works, meaning how do the studios set them up? Does the cost come out of your pocket? Do studios pay for it? Do you get to interview the cast one-on-one? Or is it a press pool type of thing with the questions are thrown out? Okay, so yeah, let's use this as an excuse to give another glimpse behind the scenes at the not unglamorous world of movie blogging. I think set visits sound a lot more exciting than they are. Not to put them down, but it sounds like, oh, we're flying to London to go to some set and whatnot. But you have to understand, we fly to London, we get in there, it's a time difference. You're tired. You usually take a nap. You get up for like maybe a dinner. You go to sleep. The next morning, you need to leave London at like 6 or 7 a.m. to get to Pinewood Studios or wherever they're having the set visit. You're at Pinewood all day, doing your thing, and then when you get out of that, you maybe go back to the hotel, grab dinner and drinks, and the next morning you got to be back up at 5 a.m. to take the flight out of there. So it's not like we get this, expenses paid trip to London to explore and have fun.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably a big misconception, because these things really are like you get in and you get out kind of thing. They're very efficient when it comes to that stuff. The experiences themselves, like on the actual set, however, that is not always as efficiently run, and it's no fault of the people who put together these press visits. It's all about
you're visiting a working production, and it's not about
what is happening on the set that day.
That working production's hundreds of millions of dollars most times, and when they have time to come do interviews or show you something, that's when they do it. You are there visiting that production. But we should say studios usually, arrange these set visits. And typically, like someone like Entertainment Weekly will get their own day on set, by themselves and do these one-on-one interviews and get all this exclusive content that they get to release, months before we get to talk about our set visits. But when we go to set, it's usually they fly out maybe a dozen sites. And some of them, the studio is paying for the airplane and for the hotel. Others, like I know some outlets do not allow that. In full transparency, they don't want to have anything paid for by the studio, so they will pay their own way and in lodging. We don't have the luxury of that. We don't have enough money to fly ourselves to London and put ourselves up in London. So, usually the way we go about it is the person that goes to the set visit usually isn't the person that reviews the movie. So there's usually a clear cut there, but it's again, it's not like here's this wine, you're going to be wine and dine trip to London or wherever, Australia, whatever. But yeah, okay, so let's talk about what the set visit is. How about you explain?
Yeah, so when you get there, you're basically like sort of corralled into a certain area, be it like a room, like a production office that's sort of on site, or just sort of off to the side, and you have to sign all this paperwork saying that you're not going to talk about anything that you've seen until they want you to talk about it. And then, they just sort of like parade people through, and maybe you'll get to talk to one or two of the stars of the movie. A lot of times you're talking to sort of below the line people, like production designers and like concept artists and visual effects supervisors and stuff like that, who are all also like really interesting people who have a lot of cool things to say, but it's not quite as like sexy as sitting there talking to like an A-list star.
It's actually interesting, but you can because get some good a lot of these stars are briefed before they come talk to us. They're like, don't talk about the third act, don't talk about this, don't mention this plot point. So when they come in, especially for like these Marvel set visits and stuff, they end up telling us or being afraid to tell us anything, even though we're going to be embargoed till like the second trailer comes out or something.
Yeah, definitely.
And everything we get from them has already been revealed in the trailer. But what's interesting is sometimes talking to those prop people or the costume people or the set designers, you can get the most interesting information because they don't know what not to say. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. They can sort of slip up and give you something.
I remember when Brad
the
was
other
on the
people
set
maybe have been briefed specifically not to mention.
Captain America: Civil War. It was a big secret that Spider-Man was in the movie, and everybody on set, they asked about Spider-Man because there was rumors, and no one was willing to say anything. Everybody was like denying it, and then they got to the I think costume department. They asked, what was the hardest costume to design, and the lady was like, "Oh, it's Spider-Man for sure." Had ruined their whole plan of keeping it secret. But in the end, that set visit runs months and months after the trailer that reveals Spider-Man runs. So I don't know what the problem is there, but
right.
Okay, I'll let you continue.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I was just going to say the other thing, too, is like sometimes you'll get to go and see either a scene being filmed. Like I went to the set of the Carrie remake from 2013, like way back in the day. And I saw the scene where, they dumped the pig's blood on her head at the prom. So they were like filming that moment. And they, a lot of times they'll do that if they can. They'll have the press show up for a moment that's like supposed to be iconic in the film. And that happens more often than not for, like remakes and stuff where you already know what those iconic moments are going to be. And they don't really have to
those moments are going to be iconic. I remember being on the set of Terminator
of
Salvation. We got to see the scene where Christian Bale, John Connor, gets the scar on his, below his eye, the iconic scar of, that John Connor has. And we were like, oh my God, we're seeing this iconic moment. It ends up being not so great. But other times, you go to a set of, like, say, a movie like The Avengers, one of the Avengers films. These guys aren't all on set together. Usually it's only a handful of days that entire team is actually on set at the same time. So they're usually flying, because they want us to get interviews with all these guys, they're having us come in during, one of those days. And generally it's not like one of these exciting, they're shooting an action scene day. Generally it's them like, sitting around talking, like one of those kind of scenes, which isn't bad. I mean, if you get Robert Downey Jr. talking, you've won. But yeah, it's not always those iconic scenes.
Yeah. And then sometimes they'll take you to like a big set or something like that, on a soundstage, like in the Carrie set in Toronto. You got to sort of walk through Carrie's house and then walk through the set where her school was, and like this big recreation of the gym and all this stuff. So they sort of talk you through all of these things, and you can see like it's really cool for people who haven't been on actual sets before, which I feel like is probably a good amount of the movie bloggers out there. But, like I worked at Paramount for a while giving tours of the lot and stuff. So I've been around film sets before, and I've worked on, movies and TV shows and stuff like that. So it's not really a new thing to me, but if you don't have that sort of baseline knowledge of like, oh, this is physically how this stuff is done on a working set, it can be very beneficial to writing about that, about those things later on. It adds to your understanding of how the sausage is made and how this stuff is actually put together, and it can really change your opinion of.
I think even for
an entire movie, really, or how movies are made, specific aspects.
How many people are involved in a shot, and how many people are working to make that one thing happen, is insane. Before I wanted to write about movies for a living, I wanted to make movies.
Yeah.
And for me, being on these sets is the closest I'm getting to being part of the movie making process, and seeing how the sausage is made, and being like, I think it's a thrill for me, at least, walking through and being on set for like a day or two, because you're not these people working these 15-hour days or whatever. You go in and you get out, you get to see the cool stuff. But I don't. It's interesting because you don't get to talk, you talk to the people in between takes, even though there is a long time in between takes. There's work to be done. There's directors giving notes to actors and stuff. You usually don't get to talk to the director that much. I've been on the set of, I think, all three Planet of the Apes movies, or this trilogy, and I don't think I spoke to the director on set at all during any of those visits. So that happened.
Wow.
But it's a fun experience, and it helps. I think the strongest thing is, for a lot of these sites send people to set that are feature writers or just freelancers, that are just writing that set visit report for them. Slash Film is different than a lot of sites, because we send the people that are working on the everyday news to the set, and not that we can talk about anything we've seen. We sign an NDA, but it helps inform our knowledge of that project. So when rumors come up that are completely bogus, we know not to cover it. When something comes up, facts are, it just helps inform. Not that we ever write anything that we've learned from the set in something previously, but yeah.
But just, contextualizing that stuff is super important for people on like us who are on the news beat every day, reading all the stuff that comes out. And especially for these big projects, there are rumors every single day, and you have to know what's worth it and what's not. So being on the set and actually, hearing from the people who are actually physically making the movie,
there's a lot of filmmakers that won't have
in that regard.
Press, or at least movie bloggers on their sets. I've never been to a Steven Spielberg movie. I would love to go, or at least see filming. Star Wars. They have not done any Star Wars set visits, and now that JJ's back, that's gonna be something that's gonna be here to stay, because he likes that mystery box closed.
Yeah. One more thing, I'm just looking back at the question from Peter from Gainesville, and one of the things he was asking was, do you get to interview the cast one-on-one? So generally it's you're in a group. I think the one-on-one stuff typically happens maybe closer to the film's release, for the press junkets and stuff like that. But when you're actually on the set, because the studio has 15 people to sort of corral, and they're not going to let you wander off on your own when you're on the set, because they don't want you to see things that you might that they might not want you to see at that particular moment. So they definitely keep everybody they keep a close eye on you, and sort of keep you all locked together.
It's what they call in our world round table interviews.
Yeah, it's basically
where
just
we sit around the table, the person comes in, and it's kind of a free-for-all where you have to fight to get to ask your question. And
Right. And the interviews are generally like 10 minutes long or something. So it really, like, that might sound like a long time, but when you're sitting there trying to get a question out and then somebody beats you to the punch and then you have to wait on not only that question, but then that answer, time is ticking away so fast. So, yeah, you don't really get that much time with the actual talent in those sorts of settings. But that's the good part about the junkets later on, is you can sort of follow
one thing
up
I've noticed, I've been doing these episodes for a while now, probably a decade now. And one thing I've noticed is that they are becoming more uniform. They're becoming more like junkets, where they're more planned and orchestrated. And, you know, here's what we're going to tell them. Here's what we're going to show them. Here's what they're going to see. Here's what, you know, the actors can and can't say. Do you know what I mean? And before, it used to be kind of like more of, you know, you go to set, and you know, you're an investigative journalist trying to, you know, piece together things, and now it's kind of like, oh no, you're not going to learn that. So it's interesting. It's also interesting that now movie studios are trying to, you know, I don't know the logic behind it, but studios, it seems like they want to spike social traffic, which means, you know, releasing a lot of stuff at the same time so that a movie is trending on Twitter and Facebook. And to do that, they'll release the set visit. They'll have the embargo for the set visit go off at the same time as the release of like the second trailer or the first trailer, so that, you know, they'll get a lot of sites writing about this movie at the same time, because we're all obviously fighting to get that information out first, even though we have the same information. And it's kind of unfortunate, because a lot of the times our information would have been interesting to readers, you know, a few months before, but not on the same day as the trailer release. And the biggest example I want to give you this is, I was on the set of Transformers 3, which was the one with the Dinobots, if you even remember that. But at the end, you know, there was Optimus Prime.
Wait a second. I think that's Transformers 4.
Wait, yes, you're right. 4.
Okay.
Yeah,
because three ends with like
correct.
the one with wingsuited guys in Chicago,
the first one with Mark Wahlberg,
4 is the one with the Dinobots.
And we're on set, and there was rumors of Dinobots, so we're asking everybody on set. You know, the producer is telling us, you know, oh, there's no Dinobots, and you know, all these people were answering this question, like, and we were kind of baffled, because this set visit runs a month before the movie comes out. You know, you're driving around LA and there's billboards everywhere with Optimus Prime riding a T-Rex Dinobot everywhere. And we're running the set visit report with the producer being like, no, there's no Dinobots in the movie. Yeah. I mean, I get it. When they're on set, they plan on that being a surprise for fans. But then the marketing company comes in and is like, no, we got to get people in those seats. You know, we got to show. I mean, that's a good poster. Optimus Prime on the Dinobot.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. They're just playing it safe because they don't fully know what the marketing campaign is going to look like yet. But like some of that stuff, like, and you know, like the SpiderMan thing is a good example. Like, you know that you're going to tease SpiderMan at some point, because that's just too big for a studio to have the restraint to leave that kind of thing as an in-movie discovery for people. So, you know, there are some like Dinobots, like, you know that's going to be on the poster. Come on,
so
guys.
Is there anything else we should add about set visits? I can say for me personally,
I think we covered most of it.
The better set visits I've been on have been the more intimate, where they've invited less people. You know, I went to the set of The Wolverine, the James Mangold film, not the one that everybody loves, but the one right before that. And that was shot in Australia, and I was on set with just a couple of people. And you know, when it's not this kind of big orchestrated group, you get a lot more information and a lot more time to dig in. I was lucky to go to the set of Jurassic World with just, you know, 3 other people. And really exploring a big film like that without the barriers you normally have is exciting. And obviously, when you write your report and there's only, you know, 2 other sites running that interview, people actually read your coverage. So yes, so What is the coolest probably set visit you've done thus far? Oh, okay.
Well, it's the one that I can't talk about yet, but I'll talk about that as soon as I'm available, as soon as I'm allowed and sort of legally been released from my shackles.
Another thing that's interesting is now that there's these cinematic universes, and not to extend this, but now that there's cinematic universes like Marvel's doing, and, you know, obviously the Dark Universe and Star Wars, it's interesting, you know, not a lot of those companies do set visits, but Marvel does. And now that these movies are becoming more and more connected, it's harder to have press on set and answer questions when, you know, they're making, like, right now they're making Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, is in production, right? And by the time that comes out, Infinity War would have come out. You know, so I'm sure that in some way must lead into that movie. But whoever is on set of a film like that, you know, it becomes a harder thing to navigate. And I'm saying this theoretically. Yes. But,
for sure.
Yeah, I think that's all I have to say on this matter. Hopefully that look behind the scenes in the movie blogging world has helped you out some. Oh, I will also want to say this. You know, I got the chance to go to the set of the last Harry Potter movie, and it was amazing. Walking through Hogwarts is incredible. But I'll tell you, you know, you walk through a section of that castle and, you know, just around the corner it ends. You know, it's like a typical movie set, and I know that's probably not surprising to you, but I would honestly tell you that if you get to go to get the chance to go to like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, it's a more complete experience because you turn the corner and there is the dining hall, or there is, do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't end. And in Hollywood, it's all about that illusion of creating just that one piece and filling it in with CG or whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly how I felt going to New Zealand and being on the Hobbiton set too. It's like you turn around and like it really is Hobbiton there, and there's no facades or anything like that sort of break the illusion.
Okay,
it's like
if you
you're
have
actually there in the real place. So
send them to peter@slashfilm.com. Please mention your name and general geographic location in case we mention it on the air. You can find more of me at slashfilm.com and at slashfilm on Twitter. You can find Ben at Ben Pearson on Twitter and, of course, slashfilm. You can read all these articles that we mentioned today on slashfilm.com. You can subscribe to this podcast, which is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. And, you know, please feel free to give us a review and rate the podcast on iTunes. That helps us out quite a bit. Spread the word, tell your friends, and we'll see you tomorrow.